This morning's project, very quickly, is just to disassemble this countershaft assembly. We've got the whole assembly here. We're going to take it apart, clean it up. We have to refit it and change the position of the center pulley especially to match up with the vertical headstock or vertical countershaft. So we're just going to very quickly disassemble this and we'll throw it in the solvent tanks. This is a pretty straightforward assembly. There's not a whole lot to it. Okay, that's the one for those. 1/8 inch for that, probably a 5/32 for the main. You've got our grease cups. Those were originally filled with, those grease cups were filled with grease, and then you just periodically tighten them down and get forced grease on in. So you've got a grease cup on either end. And there we pull the that set screw and apart. All there is locking collars on both sides on our alignment bearings there. Oh. Shouldn't be long enough. We don't have another one in there. Well, they are either seized on there or something. Oh, I think they just got about 70 or 80 years of gunk up built up on them. There's no threads in them. They're just exceptionally tight on that end. Here we've got needle bearings inside. That's what rotates it. They're all packed with grease. We'll clean those all up and reassemble them. Of course, there we've got a grease hole right in the center of that bearing, just in one side. Wipe my hands off and get a pair of gloves on and see if we can't disassemble the rest of this. And those are all seized on there, just tight as can be. And I think it's just all the grime and gunk over the years. So I'll go ahead and soak those down with a little bit of penetrating oil, and then we'll go ahead and knock those off of there. Well, we got that disassembled. The pulley was keyed on there, so we've got to pull the key out yet. This will all go in the solvent tank. We've got our oil holes to lubricate the bearings. We've got 3 collars, and the pulley acts as the last collar. On the outside, there's a bearing surface there. We've got our 2 grease cups, and then our 2 bearings. They're both identical. They've got needle bearings inside to rotate on. And for this application, I'm not going to worry about changing them. They look to be well greased and in pretty good condition for their age. But we'll run everything through the solvent tank, clean them all up, and then we can go ahead and powder coat our outer housings. I don't think I'm going to worry about these collars too much. I think we'll just clean them up and maybe polish them and reassemble them. If I was bluing today, I'd reblue them, but since I'm not, well, I think I'm just going to clean everything up, straighten our pulleys up a little bit. I got a couple little dinks. I noticed there's one little one on this which won't affect anything, and I think the big pulley's in good shape. I don't see any issues there. And then we'll go ahead, reassemble that, and get it installed, and we can figure out our belt lengths for it. I think for the electrical for now, I'm going to go ahead and use the original switch that I had, which is not going to stay on there, but for now it'll be functional, to get it running again. I do have these brackets. These brackets were originally for the factory Atlas work lights, and I think for now they clamp to the bed on this end, your work light mounts to the top, clamps to or screws to the top of that, and you've got the work light. Don't have any work lights and don't really care if I find any or not, but I do have these brackets. I think what I'm going to do is, at least for now, is go ahead, clean them up and powder coat them, or one of them anyway, and I'll just probably have to put a little spacer, but I can mount that box, that electrical box, right on top. And that's what I'll do for now. So that'll get it up out of the way. I can mount it down towards the tailstock a little bit, and I think that'll work good. Well, we're going to reassemble our countershaft assembly finally. We got our bearing housings powder coated. We got all the parts cleaned up. On my countershafts, the collar assemblies call for a washer between there and the bearing housings to sit in there. Mine did not have a washer per se. Mine had felt oilers, or felt grease retainers, I guess. They're inset down in, and there was one inset down into the, or there was a groove set up for the one in the main pulley there. I was missing the felt for in there, so we just cut a felt one. I made a punch to build those, and we just punched a new one to go in there. So the bearings go in the housings. We'll be sure and grease these up real well when we reassemble it. They go in the housings like that. We ran these all through the solvent tank, got the old grease out of them, and everything was still, it had been well greased, but we replaced it with a little bit stickier grease. They assembled just like that. We cleaned up our shaft, the countershaft itself. It's got, it's drilled through both ends, and it's got a grease hole on either side here. The pulley's on, it's held in place by a keyway. I've not locked it in place because we'll align it when we get everything else assembled. The collars go on, and they've got a set screw in each of them. There again, we won't tighten any of this down until we get everything fitted into place. Our bearings with our housings go on. And another collar on this end. other side gets the collar the same way. Might as well go ahead and put our set screw in there. That collar goes on. Maybe. There we go. This bearing assembly, and it's all held in place by this pulley. This pulley's actually got an indent on this end to hold alignment on that. So we can probably go ahead and put it in place because it's not going to change. Just about there, I believe. So if we go on the assumption that this is fixed in place because it's got such a heavy detent in it, we can go ahead and lock it down. That is indeed where that goes, then we can go ahead and kind of set our preload on this end too. Okay, we'll finish tightening those once we get it in place. So there's our countershaft assembly back together. The grease cups on the end. These grease cups had been drilled for zert fittings, so we'll go ahead and leave them back in there. I pulled all the dimensions, so I will go ahead and probably build some new grease caps. But for right now, we'll reinstall these. Whoever drilled that one drilled it crooked, drilled and tapped it crooked. These originally were just filled with grease and then periodically tightened down by hand, and that's what lubed your countershaft. We'll go ahead and reinstall them, and then we'll fill them with grease once everything's in position. Okay, well, there's our countershaft assembly. We'll set it back in place, so we'll go over to the lathe and see if we can't get that installed. If you find these videos helpful, you might hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up if you like them. If you hit the bell notification, you'll know when I turn out a new video, and leave any comments, suggestions you've got for me below. Thanks for taking the time to watch.